In 1914, the Russian Empire did something unthinkable. It banned vodka. Overnight, taverns closed, production stopped, the treasury ran dry. Within 3 years, the Tsar was gone. Vodka did not begin as a symbol. It began as chemistry. In the late Middle Ages, distillation techniques traveled east from the Islamic world into Eastern Europe. By the 14th and 15th centuries, monks in the forests of Muscovy were refining a new spirit from grain. It was crude, harsh, medicinal, but it burned clean. And in a land defined by brutal winters and political instability, that burn mattered. Vodka became medicine, then ritual, then currency. As the Grand Duchy of Moscow expanded, rulers recognized something critical. The population would drink, whether the state controlled it or not. So the state chose control. In the 16th century, under Ivan IV, known to history as Ivan the Terrible, the first state taverns were established. They were called kabaks, and they were not optional institutions. The Tsar monopolized production and sale. Private competition was restricted. Revenue flowed directly to the crown. But the system ran deeper than simple taxation. Across the Russian Empire, entire communities were built around state taverns. These government drinking houses were called kabaks. They were carefully controlled, tightly regulated, and strategically placed. Peasants could not easily produce or sell their own spirits. Instead, they were expected to buy from the state. In some regions, village officials were even given drinking quotas to meet. If consumption dropped, revenue dropped. And if revenue dropped, the empire felt it. So the system encouraged drinking, quietly, relentlessly. For millions of peasants, vodka became part of the economic structure of daily life. Not simply a habit, but an expectation. By the 18th and 19th centuries, vodka accounted for an estimated third, sometimes even 40%, of Imperial Russia's income. 40%. Wars against Sweden, expansion into Siberia, military campaigns across Eastern Europe, funded by intoxication. Peasants paid in coin. Nobles collected profits. The empire expanded, but dependence deepened. The more the people drank, the stronger the state became, and the weaker the people became. The Russian Orthodox Church condemned excess, yet the state incentivized it. Communities were structured around state taverns. Tax quotas were imposed on villages. Some peasants were pressured to meet minimum consumption targets. It was not simply cultural, it was systemic. Alcohol dulled unrest. Alcohol funded expansion. Alcohol kept the machine running. Russia became known across Europe for its drinking culture. But this was not merely stereotype, it was infrastructure. And infrastructure is dangerous when it becomes invisible. When World War I erupted in 1914, Tsar Nicholas II made a decision he believed was patriotic. He banned vodka sales to prevent disorder among mobilized troops. At first, the decision was popular. Many believed sobriety would strengthen the war effort. Soldiers would remain disciplined. Factories would stay productive. The nation would unite behind sacrifice. But the economic consequences appeared almost immediately. Vodka had been one of the empire's most reliable sources of income. Without it, the government suddenly faced a massive financial hole. Taxes could not replace the lost revenue fast enough. War expenses continued to rise, and across the countryside, people simply found other ways to drink. Homemade spirits, known as samagon, began appearing everywhere. The state had removed vodka, but it had not removed the demand. He intended it as a temporary measure. Instead, he amputated the empire's primary revenue stream. State income collapsed, black markets surged, moonshine production exploded across the countryside. The treasury weakened just as the war intensified. Inflation soared, food shortages spread, and public resentment deepened. 3 years later, revolution ignited. By 1917, the Romanov dynasty was finished. The ban did not cause the revolution alone, but it removed a stabilizing pillar. When the crutch vanished, the fractures became visible. The Bolsheviks initially attempted to maintain prohibition. It failed. Too much money was at stake. By the late 1920s, under Joseph Stalin, vodka production was reinstated at scale. The Soviet state revived the monopoly. Industrialization demanded capital. Vodka delivered it. Factory workers endured brutal hours. Food remained scarce. Political repression intensified. But vodka remained available, affordable, reliable, predictable. In many ways, it became the unofficial pressure valve of the Soviet system. Drink to endure, drink to celebrate, drink to forget. The state condemned drunkenness publicly, while depending on it privately. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev launched an aggressive anti-alcohol campaign. The campaign was sweeping. Vineyards were destroyed, distilleries reduced production. Alcohol sales were restricted across the country. For a brief moment, the policy appeared successful. Alcohol consumption dropped sharply. But the Soviet economy was already fragile, and vodka had long been one of the government's most dependable sources of revenue. When sales collapsed, billions of rubles vanished from the state budget. At the same time, the black market exploded. People began distilling their own alcohol at home. Sugar shortages spread across Soviet grocery stores. And frustration with the government grew even stronger. Once again, the state had underestimated how deeply alcohol was woven into everyday life. Vineyards were destroyed, sales were restricted, prices increased sharply, consumption initially dropped. So did state revenue. Billions vanished from the national budget. Black markets flourished once again. Homemade spirits, samagon, returned to kitchens and basements across the country. Public frustration grew. The reform was meant to strengthen the Soviet Union. Instead, it accelerated fiscal instability during a fragile period of economic restructuring. By 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Vodka survived. The empire did not. Vodka is older than the Soviet Union, older than the Russian Empire. It has outlived czars, outlived ideologies, outlived borders. It became entwined with Russian identity not because it was strong, but because it was useful. Useful to rulers, useful to economies, useful to people seeking warmth in a cold system. The paradox remains. Vodka financed expansion. Vodka stabilized regimes. Vodka numbed dissent. But every time the state tried to remove it, instability followed. It was never just a drink. It was policy, it was currency, it was control. And sometimes, it was collapse. Empires fall for many reasons: war, economics, revolution. But sometimes, they fall when the thing holding them together is taken away. Vodka did not destroy Russia, nor did it save it. But for centuries, it flowed through its veins. Clear, cold, indispensable, and dangerous. Next episode, Empire moves west. Industry meets rebellion again. But this time, the revolution is bottled in glass and wrapped in oak.